So good morning, everyone. On behalf of Inmarsat, I'll be giving this presentation. And we are the digital society, so we all want to be connected anytime and anywhere, whether it's land, sea, or air. And I think the takeaway is that connectivity is no longer seen as a cost burden, but as an enabler of the digital society. And the next movie will show that. Oh, wait. Someone has to press it. Yes, we are the digital society, and we're all part of it. So global production and supply chains are increasing in complexity. They involve many different industries, and each industry has its own business models, processes, and regulatory frameworks and authorities. IoT, or the Internet of Things, is set to play a key role in creating end-to-end transparency and enhancing the efficiency within the supply chain. So each player within the supply chain that can actually use data to improve their operations, but also that is able to create partnerships within the supply chain, are actually set to gain a significant competitive advantage. So as we all know, the supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We did a research program in 2018 to see how IoT, or Internet of Things, is being adopted within the supply chain. And this was conducted by an independent market research firm, Face & Born, and they interviewed 750 respondents across the supply chain. So they targeted agriculture, energy, maritime, mining, transportation, and others, which was the retail and financial sector. And their main goal was to find out how IoT is being used, what the attitude is, and predictions around IoT. And quite interestingly, they tried to categorize the respondents in 4 groups based on their answers. So you can see the 4 groups there. You have on the one end the laggards and the starters, and then on the other hand you have the innovative or the progressives and the leaders. So within maritime, we also interviewed 125 respondents, and this was globally, so EMEA, APAC, and Americas. And of course, fully in line with our reputation, 79% of the respondents fell in the laggard and starters group. So our industry is adopting IoT, but we're not very progressive at it. So here you can see a few trends, and I'll just explain a little bit more. So $2.5 million is the average investment that the respondents will invest in IoT solutions. Quite interestingly, 24% will actually invest more than $3 million, and 14% will actually invest less than 100K. So of course in the maritime industry you have different types of players, but it also shows that within the industry we have different attitudes towards IoT. Not everyone is embracing it. But there is budget, so that's on the bright side. An important driver for adopting IoT solutions is regulation. So we're all aware that there's a lot of emissions, MEPC is coming up with all these emission monitoring regulations. So 100% of the ship owner managers will actually embrace IoT solutions to start monitoring their emissions by 2023. The respondents were not really convinced that by using IoT solutions they could actually generate revenues, but they were convinced that it could lead to cost savings, and they expect that it could lead to a 14% cost savings within the next 5 years. So no revenues, but a cost saving. And I think most of the cost savings would be on the fuel side, right? If you monitor your fuel consumption, you could probably optimize it. And then one which was quite concerning for us is that 51%, so more than half of the respondents, actually say there's a lack of timeliness in the data. So there's a time lag between actually getting the data from the ship and analyzing it on the shore side. So it shows that there's actually a role for us as industry also to show them that there are solutions out there to get the data from ship to shore. But it's still an obstacle in fully deploying IoT. So the report is available on our website, and you can download it fully free of charge. And it's quite interesting because it's not only maritime, but it's also the other 6 sectors. So it gives a very good understanding of how IoT is being adopted within the supply chain. Then another interesting report was from the Danish Ship Finance and Rainmaking. They published a maritime trend report on startups. So what they did is they identified 160 different startups that are currently in the maritime industry, or they're targeting the maritime industry. And the startups are quite interesting because they're a testing ground for new business models. So they can experiment with new technologies, test new solutions, and orchestrate value at a lower cost than big established companies. So basically, startups are a very interesting way for us to learn from their successes, but also from their failures. So again, this report had 4 different categories, and the above 2 categories are more about making vessels more efficient. So it's about vessel tracking or voyage optimization. The below 2 categories, I think I have a laser, yes. So the below 2 categories are focused on optimizing the whole supply chain and trying to come up with new business models. So we're not really interested in the 4 categories. What actually got our attention was the funding and the maturity level of the funding. So as you can see, there's an exponential growth in the funding and in the maturity level. And this is actually a very promising sign because investors would not be funding startups if it wasn't a promising business model. So based on this, we can also say that IoT is actually, it is being facilitated by the industry. So this report is also free of charge available on their website. The link is included. And it's very interesting because it also shows you the 160 startups. And there's some really crazy ideas in there, which I think is pretty cool. Is the 4 minutes the time I still have? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up. So the challenge with IoT adoption is not on the demand side, because ship owner managers, they actually see the value, there's some budget, and there's some vision around it. And it's not on the technology side, because there's a lot of supply of the technologies have been proven, there's a lot established and new players. But there is a challenge, and I'll just go through this pretty fast. So if you have a smart ship, you somehow have to get the data from ship to shore. And as the survey showed, 51% actually say that's a challenge. So here, just very briefly, a ship owner manager will go to a third party, and they will actually ask them to get the data from ship to shore. So they will invest some sensors and an industrial PC on board of the vessel. And then over the primary connectivity of the ship owner, they will get the data and send it to the shore side. So for instance, the first application provider could be voyage optimization, the second application provider could be emission monitoring, the third one could be ballast water. So what you get is you'll have several systems, you'll have multiple equipment, the data is being sent multiple times, you'll get congestion, and then on the shore side, the data is actually in different clouds, it's not interoperable, and the data is locked to different application providers. So the current system of getting data from ship to shore is actually not scalable, and it's very expensive. So what the smart ship would need is an IoT platform, which is based on harmonizing and streamlining the whole process. So you would have an agnostic box on board of the vessel that would collect all the data, whether it's serial, analog, or digital. Then you would have a dedicated bandwidth or dedicated pipeline that would send the data from ship to shore. And the data will be stored in a centralized cloud-based database. And then all the application providers can tap into this cloud. So conclusion is you have one installation on board of the vessel. Data is collected only one time. It's delivered on a separate line. So it's not longer used over the primary bandwidth of the ship owner. So it's not a hidden cost for the ship owner, but it's actually part of the offering the application provider is offering. So bandwidth is included. There's one single cloud for the operator. And the cool thing about the cloud is that the cloud will provide an API and a dashboard for the ship owner manager so they can start analyzing their data and use their data. And then individual application providers can tap into the cloud as well. And the data can be shared. So it's a transparent system, it's more scalable, and hopefully it's less expensive. Here's another example of what we've been working on. SRH is actually a maritime provider, and they provide Actis updates. And what they found is that a lot of Actis updates are actually done through USB sticks and CDs. And as we all know, USB sticks, it's not the most cyber secure thing. So here's another example where we try to work together with SRH, and we provided them dedicated bandwidth so they can actually in real time update the Actis charge. So it's another construction where we're facilitating third parties with dedicated bandwidth and creating value for the ship owner. So it's less hassle for the ship owner. And then my last slide, and I still have 17 seconds. So just to wrap it up, IoT adoption is growing in our industry. There's a lot of new innovative ventures in the industry. What we notice is that the smart ship needs dedicated bandwidth, so bandwidth should no longer be a hidden cost for the ship owner manager, should be included in that service. If you want a smart ship, you'll need connectivity because you'll need to get the data from ship to shore. You need scalable IoT platforms, and of course it needs to be cyber resilience. And I haven't touched on the cyber aspect, but I think the second panel will talk more about that. So I met my minutes, and no questions, right? Just for later. Okay, cool.